I had a state trooper pull me over, and I had my fiance with me in the truck. It's an old 80s truck, and so he came up and he opened the door, and without really asking, he just opened the door, not having anything to do with anything. And so after a little bit of conversation, just trying to reason with the man, it ended up, he kept going back and forth to his car, and he called back up and said that I was planning to use my weapons against law enforcement. And so that led to it being escalated and me getting snatched out of my vehicle and my girl and charged with everything under the sun. Really, the charges have nothing to do with what the stop was about. That was just really them trying to cover their mistake. Really, the sheriff department wasn't really a part of it, even though they broke into the vehicle. It was really that one state trooper with no accountability that caused a lot of the issue. My name's Samuel Doolin. I'm a Florida farm boy. I grew up in the cattle fields and orange groves of Florida. Grew up a Christian all my life, raised on the scriptures, believing it's the highest authority in all areas of life and living. I went into the Army and Ranger Regiment, was kicked out over the COVID mandates, and just recently was arrested for some Second Amendment charges and stuff. So that's a little bit of the background. Okay. December 8th, it was around 6:30 to 7 o'clock in that area when the pullover started, when he pulled me over. And yeah, so on Kathleen Road, so I couldn't tell you the exact spot, but right around the fire department. I am not exactly sure. It's kind of weird, the situation. It could have been a setup because, again, me and the FBI have not been on good terms with the January 6th. I know I talked to the case agent, and we had a headbutt match over my cousin and that bolo of armed and extremely dangerous while I was still in the Army. And so that could have been a reason. I tried not to jump to conclusions, so it could have just been the officer was looking for trying to make a quota. I don't know, because he said he pulled me over for no tag. I explained the farm laws, and he recognized them, but now he was fishing. So he was just using it to pull me over. He wasn't actually worried about me not having the tag. He was fishing for either a ticket or a citation. He was trying to get what he wanted. So, Roger. And it wasn't that we started yelling at each other. That wasn't it. It was anytime we just tried to talk for 2 seconds, the man wasn't patient, and he was busy trying to get what he wanted, single focused. And when he couldn't have that, he was going to find a way to get it. So walked around, tried to find my VIN number when I told him I wasn't helping him with that, and just go look up the law. And we would continue. I'd give him everything he wanted, just show me a reason for pulling me over. He went back to his car, came back, and he just kept escalating. And then I tried to bring it back down, but there was no bringing it back down after it reached a certain point. Once the call was made, training kicks in. There's 2 different times of this. There's the one with the state trooper, and then there's the time with the sheriff's department. So after the conversation of getting on to him for opening my door, and let me just establish this. We've never talked about firearms. It never happened. So there was no, you have firearms in the vehicle and stuff. He only discovered that because he opened the door. Now, it's not illegal to have firearms, so the reason he could use that shouldn't be a thing, but he then walked around, looked at the VIN, left. When he came back, after talking to his superiors, he came back and he told me to get out of the car. And I'm seeing this as a power trippy cop. From my perspective in the car, we went from just talking to, he's telling me get out. Well, he's not told me I'm under arrest. So I'm like, no, sir, this is my only protection between me and you is this door. And so I'm like, and I could see it bothered him. So I'm like, I can see it's going nowhere good. So I go ahead and I'm like, sir, let's just restart. This is going nowhere good. Let's just restart. My name's Sam. This is, farm vehicle. I tried to reestablish some stuff. I don't remember exactly what I said during that, but I remember we were just trying to restart, and he walked away. At that point, so that was the conversation of get out of the car. At that point, he went back and he called his backup and he told him that I had a firearm to use against law enforcement, which wasn't a thing. And then the officers showed up, called over the microphone and whatnot. So during that, they simply said, put your hands where we could see them. If you can roll down your windows, do so. My windows don't roll down. I had the flaps. We stick our hands out the windows and we're complying, but we're not going to get out of the car until we're told we're under arrest. It's kind of like the shot. If you go take the shot and it's not the mandatory one, there's no suing. If you willfully give up your rights when no one's forced you per se or told you you're under arrest, well, you yielded your rights. They didn't steal your rights. So that's the way I was coming at it. And then when I finally saw the guy roll up with a gun and a shield, at that point, I've seen too many situations, and it was, you never know how you're going to act until you're in it. So to say I did it for this reason, I was just reacting at that point. So, but at the far front of my mind, I remember watching a bunch of videos and stuff. It can be your fault, his fault, nobody's fault, and you die. That doesn't do you any good. So if you move, and the guy across the car doesn't understand what's going on, he yells gun, 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 you're dead regardless if you're right or wrong. So I'm not moving until, I'm told I'm under arrest and whatnot. So from there, it just kind of, everything just kind of evolves, breaking the window, getting tased. I haven't moved the entire time. I don't keep telling them no. I just keep telling them, hey, talk to me. Because my family knows a lot of sheriff's department. Not that we're buddy-buddy, but we know most of them just from working at the gun shops and stuff. So we have a good relationship with officers. And so I figured, state trooper, not so good. Sheriff's department, I'm like, these are reasonable people. Well, they weren't communicating. I'm like, hey, just talk to me. I figured I could explain it and we could go back to a zero no matter what happened, take it back down. It never just went down though. So the issue of the weapons came up. So it depends. Right when the guy first opened my door, so they're not hidden. They're not concealed. I get up every morning and I put them in my car because you never know what a day may bring. And so they're open to plain sight, but for his sake, he couldn't have seen them because my girl's sitting in the way. It's in the between us. So until he opened that door, he had no clue that there was weapons, which I don't know if that's a police tactic now or what, but it's unconstitutional. So he opened up the door, and as I'm talking to him about, hey, what are you doing? That's when I saw him look down, kind of like that. And then he looks back up, never mentions them. He just looks, and then we continue the conversation. He doesn't act fearful, he just looks, and I notice he sees them, which isn't a big deal. It's just something I recognized. Then he walked around. He's not running around. He's not worried. He's not paying attention to us. So he wasn't afraid of the weapons. When he came back, he was trying to use the weapons as an excuse. He's like, you have weapons in his car, right? I need you to get out. Because he knew he made the mistake of finding out about the weapons through illegal means. So he was trying to use that as his safety to get me out of the vehicle without cause, using a faulty Supreme Court case, which is also not law. But that was the thing. The weapons came into play later after they ripped me out of the vehicle because the guy said I threatened to use them against law enforcement, and they're trying to tack on charges. So they were just trying to find a way to keep me in jail because they'd kind of came through this stinking to the public. The best way I could put it is, if you look it up on YouTube, and it's not some conspiracy, you can look it up. There's a training video that all officers are shown, and it's the sovereign citizen, because that's a oxymoron in itself. Sovereign, they're not the same. But all that being said, there's a training video that teaches them basically, if you believe the Constitution as it's written, or you believe the Bible as it is written, and you don't believe that, if you question someone's authority at all, then you're a sovereign citizen, and their definition of sovereign citizen is a terrorist. So, and they take that and they go, their training video says if anybody, they literally say, well, there's some registered ones that Grady knows of, and they sometimes win. Well, if they sometimes win, then they were correct. But again, they're mixing everyone as a group. It doesn't matter if you're really a sovereign citizen, they're mixing everyone as a group, and under this name that they've classified as terrorists. And they tell their officers, if someone's handing you paperwork and challenging your authority and trying to reason with you, don't listen to them. They're trying to distract you and kill you. They show a video of a young man get out and shoot a with his father shoot an officer. And so they instill fear into the officers and make them treat their citizens like they're in Fallujah. And so that's kind of what that's about. I don't know if there's any way of knowing. You probably find out the registered ones, because it's a movement. It's a mixture of stuff. You have these young people growing up, and people period, growing up and seeing that something's not right in this country, and they want to make a change. But then the enemy, like the devil, if you have the Word of God, you're going to have counterfeits. So if you have the truth, you're going to have the truth with a mixture of lie. And so kids will get on this YouTube and stuff, and they'll see, and I'm not attacking sovereign citizens, but you're going to see the truth mixed with misdirection, I guess is the best way. They're trying to paid opposition. So they're trying to get people distracted on all these not bad causes, but stuff that's not going to actually change things. And so that's kind of with that. So what they'll do is they'll end up registering. They'll get a birth certificate and they'll register it or whatnot through this process, and so get recognized as not their straw man, so not an LLC. That's the best way I can say it. And so they try to get recognized as a human being and not some LLC thing that they think the court sees them as. And so there's that. There's another one where they go and they get passports. So they're just trying to go about their life without trouble, so they register so that an officer sees this and they don't have to explain this when they pull it up online. Those you can count. You can count the registered ones. But then there's just people that are just trying to figure out what to do, and they've seen something on YouTube about rights to travel and all these other things. They're not registered. It's people seeing the Constitution mixed with this sovereign citizen thing, and they're like, well, I don't know what to do, let me try it. That's the normal group of people. There's some people willing to try it, some people that it's not worth risking their career over. So I'm not a sovereign citizen in that definition. Sovereign being, being basically the ruling class, having no one over you. That's every citizen. That's period. If people don't agree with that, they don't understand the Constitution. I'm not a sovereign citizen. I don't believe in mixing the contract law and the straw man and stuff. I believe it's just ignorance. The courts aren't out to get you in that sense. They might be trying to make money, but they're not thinking of it the way the sovereign citizens believe. I believe it's just they're not taught the law. They've just not been taught the true law, if I can, constitutional law. They've been taught to stomp on that, and that doesn't really count. That's my belief. I believe the Constitution. I believe God's Word. I believe in obeying even things that aren't quite constitutional for the cause of Christ in some senses. But I do believe that there's stuff that's not lawful in this country, and people might not agree, but that's the way I look at it. That's just the way I look at it. So right when I was arrested, the day of, they took us to, I don't want to call it a field office, but a field office, a sheriff's department office. And while we were in that holding cell before booking, Agent Radabaum, the sheriff's department special agent that works with the FBI, he was there. The one that I talked to about Johnny, the one I talked to that was working with the case agent Timnit Taylor, that guy was there, and he was asking us about where's Johnny. That was the first conversation I had when I got to the holding cell. They didn't handcuff me, nothing. They brought me in. They're like, "Hey man, where's Johnny?" He's like, "I don't care about your case." That's one of those things that kind of made me wonder if it wasn't like staged, the whole thing. Don't know, but that was kind of what I was dealing with. And so they brought it up, and in short, our conversation was, if I did know, I wouldn't tell you, but I don't. And you and me both took an oath. You, me, Grady, everybody took an oath. The difference is I'm willing to keep mine, you're not. And so that's kind of where that conversation ended. Well, the picture I ended up with, and while I was even in the military, was just Elijah. I mean, most throughout the scriptures, like, though it was against the cause of Christ, everyone's thinking, well, they have to say, I hate the gospel in order for it to be attack on the cause. But that's not the way it was. They said Paul was a rebel rouser or a seditionist, actually. They said that about Paul. they never made it about Christ in particular. They were always trying to lie about him, because saying it's about this Jesus wouldn't sound so good, so that the liars would lie to the court or to the governor to try to get them to act in their favor. And so stuff like that. And but anyway, God would hide people, and during that time is the sweetest fellowship with him. Paul was let down in a basket. Elijah ran from King Ahab and all the officers that were after him, and God took care of him and protected him, and that was some of the sweetest time with him, preparing him for what might come later. And that's kind of the way I see with Johnny, is that God's going to use him mightily later, and he's using him mightily now. He said to Elijah when he ran off after dealing with Mount Carmel, he's like, "Lord, kill me, I'm the only one here to serve you." And he's like, God got, fed him, pepped him up, and he's like, "Look, you're not the only one. There's several thousand that are hiding and have not bowed their knee to Baal." So the same way, I believe that God's using him like Elijah to inspire others. And I believe that's the reason they want him so bad, is because evil will not go unchallenged. And that's what Johnny is a direct spit in the face of evil men. The problem is that these people are nice guys. Morally, I see that as an issue with being able to break your oath and whatnot, but they're usually nice guys, or at least trained to talk nice. And so most people don't intend to be evil. They're just trained. They're taught that this is not unjust when God says it is, and so they're taught I'm just doing a job. So talking to the man, he's just trying to do a job. He's getting fired if he doesn't do that job, if he doesn't force that. And so I can understand. I can be sympathetic toward that. But in the end, he's not the one that's going to spend life in jail or get killed over it. It's my cousin. So that's where I come from. I'm like, I understand your position, but in the end, you lying to yourself is going to get someone else killed, so I can't lie to you. So the charges are resisting without violence, I think. So resisting arrest, possession of a short barrel rifle, altering serial numbers, and possession of 2 machine guns, and concealed carry without a license. Really, that's up to God, but the next thing scheduled is motion hearings. Had first appearance, or I guess you would call it, I had a first appearance. I had an arraignment, and I'm doing my own lawyer work pro se. And I put in about 10 motions, all of them, holding my rights, because I know they try to act like you waive rights. If it's in their benefit, you have your rights. If it's not, they consider them waived unless you ask, which is unconstitutional, but it's what they do. So judges will act as if they can't be partial, which they can't. Their job is to stay out of it and be impartial, let y'all solve it. They step in when there's an issue. But they're also supposed to be there to defend you against improper due process. The thing they say, well, we're not to be partial, but then they're partial with the state. That's the truth, and they know it. They're partial with the state. They eat with the guy, the prosecutor and them go out to lunch. I mean, it's just the truth. You work with the guy every day. And so no ill feelings about that, but they're lying to themselves if they say they're not being partial. So they looked at the case, and I put in a bunch of motions, and if they don't answer a motion, the court is supposed to, because they're being impartial, grant it to the motioner, because the guy didn't dispute it. Well, there's been tons of that. My girl put in a motion to dismiss, never got an answer. It's supposed to be instantly dismissed, but the court won't do it. I put in a motion to dismiss, same thing. Motion speedy trial. They sent me a letter 4 days before the hearing, so it takes about a week to get the letter. But even if it got there in time, they mismarked it to send it to someone else's house. And so making sure I wouldn't make the hearing, because I didn't ask for a motion. I said, I'm keeping my right to a speedy trial, which I had from the very beginning, but they considered it waived. So I asked for it. Well, then they do this whole ring around the Rosies to try to throw it off to buy more time. Even if they'll grant it to you in the end, they're buying more time, because they've got 60 days to get you the trial with everything you have to have, or the case gets thrown out. So stuff like that, denying me a right to a grand jury indictment, saying that Florida doesn't do that. The Constitution demands that they do. Florida doesn't do it. Stuff like that. That's kind of where it is. So they're going for motions, hearing motions, when the case is supposed to. So it could get thrown out tomorrow, or we could keep playing this ring around the Rosies game. So I'll go and I'll deal with the things that are a little bit simpler to handle for people. So resisting, the officer has to have told you you're under arrest or something like that. He's got to be performing his duties, not just in uniform and doing his daily duties. He's got to be in the middle of a actual arrest. So, or sorts. Well, that's not the case. So there's no resisting if they say you're under arrest after they've been trying to fight you. And so they usually try to stall saying you're under arrest till after they have you in handcuffs, because again, any failure in due process, they lose the case if they forgot to read your Miranda rights. So they try to stall what they're supposed to do as long as possible so that they could say, well, he wasn't technically under arrest, and I asked him questions and he answered. That's why they do that. So there was no resisting arrest because there was no arrest yet. There was, and it has to be lawful too. It can't just, if they illegally pulled you over, nothing after that matters. It really doesn't. So fruit of a rotten tree. Then you go into altering a serial number. In Florida, and really any state, but Florida especially, there's something called an 80% loader. It'll be with pistols, it'll be with rifles. So the lower is considered the weapon by ATF rules and different things. Unconstitutional, but that's what they do. So it's the serialized portion of the gun. Well, the companies can build it and just not machine out where the trigger drops in, which is a very important part, and they can sell it to you without a background check, without all these things, and it's not a loophole because it's your constitutional right anyway. Gun laws are the loopholes. And so, anyway, you can get these because they're not finished. They might as well be paperweights because they're not finished. You can machine them out yourself. It's legal. You're not selling it. You're allowed to have it. And so, there's no serial numbers to remove. You got to knowingly remove a serial number. Well, if there's no serial number to remove, it's legal, and 80% lowers are that way. So there's that charge. What do you call it? Short barrel rifles. You get into the pistols and rifles and stuff like that. If you have a pistol AR, AK under something under 16 inches, if I'm not mistaken, 16 inches, then they consider it a short barreled rifle. Or if it has a different stock, and that's why I say a lot of people are in the same boat as me. There's something called a pistol brace. An ATF, the head of the ATF, yes, was, when he was leaving out the door, gave us basically short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, and what would qualify as a machine gun, aka the binary triggers and bump stocks. Because he was going out the door, he saw how it was all unconstitutional, and he granted us it back by technicality, saying it's a pistol. So if it has a brace on it, aka a different looking stock, no difference in functionality, it just looks different. And they consider that a pistol brace. No difference functionality wise, it's just that. So if you throw on a stock on that, now you're a felon and we're going to take your life for it. That's the difference there. So then you've got the machine guns, binary triggers, anything that a machine gun is just something that if you pull the trigger once, it doesn't go bang, it goes bang, 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 more than one shot. So the argument for me is U.S. versus Miller, the Constitution in of itself, it might be Miller versus the U.S., but anyway, the idea is that the Supreme Court ruled that that the Second Amendment defends militia-style weapons or military-style weapons, because the point of the militia is the average people are able to hold off an invasion. And if they can't do that, it says the Second Amendment says basically in sorts, if you don't have a militia, you don't have a free state, if you were just to backtrack everything. So if everyone's like, well, we don't have the militia today, all right, you don't have a free state. And so the people are that militia. So the Second Amendment says, basically, a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed. So even if you say that, well-regulated means just in good order. We've perverted that to mean like regulations. It just means in good working order, aka you have to have one in working order. We don't. It's not a free state, and that's necessary for the security of a free state, a free country. So no militia that's well working, then you don't have a free country. We don't have a free country. But even if you said that they could regulate the militia, it says that being necessary, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you could regulate the militia, that means in this part that you can't regulate the guns. And so it's one of those things, the people know this, everyone believes this, but they let a handful of people up in DC that are morally obscure. They know they're doing wrong. They allow them to tell them what to do. They allow them to tell them what they're going to do with their kids. They allow them to pervert their kids and all these different things. We know this, but we're not really man enough to stand up and say, okay, this is my right. I'm not asking for a right. A right, you don't ask for permission. The Muslims gained a lot of rights recognized in the military where they can wear their turbans and stuff and not eat pork and different things. They didn't ask for that. They just did their beliefs and government recognized it. That's the same way here. And so short barrel machine guns are something that's used by the military presently very commonly. It doesn't make the firearm more dangerous. It's only dangerous, the way something is used defines if it's dangerous or not. We've allowed them to make non-victimless crimes into crimes, and that's how government expands its power. The argument I would use is simply this. If you're a proponent, if you're down far in the liberal camp, I can't help there. But the problem is that even the people that believe in gun rights are believing some of this propaganda. They buy it unconsciously. We were raised in slavery kind of thing. So they don't believe in round count magazines, or they believe that it's wrong to limit capacity of a magazine, but then they believe that you can limit the cyclic rate of a gun. So how many rounds is too many? One per minute, a musket? 10, 8, we got an M1 Garand. Let's bump it up and have it, a magazine of 10 rounds. How many rounds is too many? 30, 60, 100? They'll believe that's wrong, to limit. But then they won't use the same logic. How many rounds per minute firing is too many? A musket, M1 Garand, the cyclic rate. M4, or it's these things aren't logical. Gun laws aren't logical. That's the reason you have the pistol brace stuff and the binary and the bump stock. People are confused because they're not logical. That's the whole point. They're meant to be restriction without purpose. And so, anyway, I'm sorry for going long, but that's the answer there. She's doing good. She was a trooper. She was calmer than I was. She took it like a sport. She's back up in Pennsylvania with her father and whatnot, and everything's going well there. Just trying to figure all this out. That's where we're at. So it's really depends. You got just different people, different walks of life. Most people are for me. You have some people that are just scared for you or scared for their job. And I've had, not really people attack me, it's just not want to talk to me or be involved. And kind of like my brother with January 6th. Some family pulled away, didn't want to get involved. And so that's how government works. I don't want to say government. Good government doesn't work that way, but corruption works that way. It tries to divide you, because when you're together, you can stand against evil. And so they try to make you fearful you're going to lose something. Well, first answer is just going to be God helping me out and guiding it. But as far as other things, I would say, because the press conference that Sheriff Grady Judd put out, that all publicity is good publicity, and then the fact it was attached to January 6th, and there's already a following for that, and then the fact that the ATF has made this pistol brace ruling, basically making everyone in the same boat I am, and so I would say that's a large part of it. And then I would say, as we were talking about earlier, that just you normally don't see people talking about their cases. The lawyers don't like that. Where me doing my own case, I just felt being straightforward and straight shooting. If I'm guilty, I'll be found guilty. If I'm innocent, I have nothing to fear, so I just told my side. About the same as like getting kicked out of the military or the COVID in the military. Flips it upside down, but really you can't threaten me with a good time. If you put me in prison, I'm going to turn it upside down for Jesus. If I'm outside the prison, I'm going to turn it upside down for Jesus. My life is the Lord's. So though it may affect the average person's life because they're worried about losing what they have on this earth, I'm not too clingy on those things. So it has affected it, but that just means a change of direction. So that's kind of where I'm at. There was a couple times that they said Samuel Pollock and stuff because they were trying to attach it to the Pollocks and the January 6th, which I have no problem with that. But looking at it from a lawyer's perspective, they were trying to taint the jury. That way any jury pool they got had already had in their mind their narrative. But I'm not offended by that. So they kept attaching me to the Pollocks and the January 6th. Then they said I was a sovereign citizen and that I was basically a cop killer. That was the whole point. But then watching with Grady and stuff, Grady and me had conversations before. Well, like I've called his apartment while I was in the military and we tried to have discussions. In fact, the day before, well, I had talked to him while DeSantis was down here at the fire department signing a bill. I got to talk to Grady face to face. I'm like, hey, now's not probably a good time. When can we have a sit down conversation, just talk? And he said, just set up a meeting. So I'm like, all right. So I called his secretary, we set up a meeting. And actually the day before my arrest, I called up Grady's office. I'm like, hey, I'm just calling about that meeting. They're like, we're setting it up. And then I got arrested and he's like, oh, I don't know if he's a ranger. I don't know really who this guy is. And he's not telling the truth. He knows that's blatantly him just hiding that truth. I don't know if he was reading off a narrative or what he was doing, but then you see him, he's kind of half tracking because normally Grady would make his jokes and really just destroy the other person. But he's reading off his narrative or whatever he's doing, however it's done. But you can see him stop and go, this doesn't make any sense. Because he knows me. And he's like, this don't make any sense. Because this isn't the way that people do if they're trying to be suicide by cop. It's not what they do if they're trying to kill cops. This is not what the narrative being put out that I'm reading is not what the facts are showing. So he knew something was sketchy and he was actually saying it on the news conference. And so stuff like that. There's a lot of things. So it's 2 Corinthians 12:15. I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved.
Is that new?
This I got from my girl. She gave me that, and that's a little compass I had from the Army, so I call it my moral compass. I've had multiple growing up. Like I had a little small New Testament I'd carry to school, and I have a 5th grade education. I'd carry it to school, and I'd sit on the bus ramps and I'd try to tell people about Jesus. And so that was when I grew up that way. I had little Bibles here and there and would write into them. I grew up around other Christians and stuff, and that really impacted my life. But there was a point in my life where God got a hold of me, because I grew up around Christianity, and then I became a believer, and I really did. But having that devotion to actually be disciplined in the Word of God came later in life. And so in my teens somewhere, it finally clicked, and out of necessity for others, I got into it and I started trying to learn what the Scriptures say for myself, because I knew about them and I had answers, but it was from someone else. I didn't know it for myself. So the Bible, I went and this particular Bible, I went through a couple of them, but this particular one I found at a house we used to live in that was falling in. And I went through it, and my parents told me that it's either my grandmother or my granddad's, and it was giant print, and I loved it because I could, it was easy to read, but it's easy to find what you're looking for. And so I've had this before the Army, and I carried it everywhere I went as I marked through it, and really one of the biggest points in my life, God was really showing me His Word. And my family at times thought I hated Him because I'd be at a party and something would hit my mind. I'm like, let me go mark that down. I run out, and they think I just didn't want to spend time with them, when I really was just trying to eat up the Word of God. So it wore out. In the military, if you're carrying it and you don't have a Bible case, paper wears out. So, hold on a second. But you carry it every day and whatnot. Paper wears out and binders wear out. So when I got in the military, pages were falling out, and so I tied it with a piece of leather and I'd carry it. But there was a time. So when I was in the military, you'd have to go to parade rest when I was in Ranger selection course. You go to parade rest and everyone's getting smoked if someone doesn't. And so I'm holding my Bible, we're getting ready to go on leave. I'm like, well, if I don't go to parade rest, I have this in my hand, what will happen? So I had a carbiner, a little clip, hooked onto that leather strap. And right as I see the man coming out, I just hook it on my belt and I go to parade rest and everyone's like, ease. Well, this sergeant walks by and he walks right next to me. I'm right up front. And he stops and he backs up. Everyone thinks we're all dead. And he looks at me and he looks me over and he goes, I like it, don't change a thing. And from there on out, I started carrying it on my hip. And I made the joke to some officers. I'm like, well, they're like, why do you do that? I'm like, well, stay strapped or get clapped. You know, I make jokes with them about carrying, but I'm like, I don't want to be a secret agent Christian. So even though, you know, you don't want to be fake and be carrying around just to look like you're a Christian, but on the other sense, I'm like, I know I'm timid. And I know that I'm going to have a tendency to hide and be that secret agent Christian. I'm like, at least this will make me accountable to God that I'm hurting His cause if I'm out, you know, drinking or living it up and acting ungodly while I have this on me. So that was my accountability, is having it like that. And so it'd bring up conversations and whatnot. But while I was walking to a gun range one day, a couple miles in regiment, I looked back and I'd lost a bunch of my pages. So I went and I walked a mile back, I found them, put them back in, and I glued it all back together. And then I've marked it and it's ripped up and stuff. And so it's just well worn. It's about maybe, I keep saying 7, but it's quite a years old. And I don't know if it's just kind of my weird personality or whatnot, but I've been through so many things. It's that military dark humor that you laugh or you cry. So crying's not going to help me, so you laugh at things. And so I don't really, not in the biblical way, but I don't really count the cost. I do estimate things, but I look at it and go, well, not what could happen to me, but what will happen if I don't do it. That's what I look at. And so that's how I make that decision. But then I don't really feel the effect. Like some people are worried about the fear of when you lose something. I'm not wearing all that weight until I'm in it. So I'm like, I know what that could mean. Spending my life in prison, I don't want to do that. But I don't carry that weight on me all the time. I'm just like, well, I'm going to be worried what will happen if I don't please God in this. That's what, I'm more worried about what God, you know, I fear God more than I fear man. And so I've got nothing to lose. It's all God's. God can have me in prison, He can have me out. That judge is not the authority. As Jesus said to the Pilate, He's like, you would have no authority unless God gave it to you. Even if it's a wicked judge, I can trust that God loves me, and that if He loves me, that even if the judge has his way, God's really having His way. If I'm looking at it the right perspective, God can move me out, He can move me in, but regardless, though He slay me, yet will I serve Him. But I know my God loves me, and wherever He puts me, He's not going to take something without giving me something better back. So that's kind of how I wear that. If you send me to jail, yeah, that might to some people look bad, but God will take care of my family. If I had a family, He'd take care of that family. That's not my job award. My only duty in this life is to obey God. And if God said take care of my family, I take care of it till I can't, then it's up to God. So if He puts me in jail, I'll change it for Jesus Christ. If He keeps me out of jail, I'll use that for Jesus Christ. That's the way I look at it. Just know to stand on your convictions. Try to make sure those convictions are based on the Word of God. But stand for your convictions, because they're important, even if you don't think so. God says to obey His Word, but also He gave you that conscience. You want that conscience to be toward God, not just random stuff. But God says to not compromise on those convictions, to go against your conscience is neither safe nor right, as Luther put it. Stand for your convictions for God and man. Those two things. Stop worrying about what will happen to you. God will take care of you. Be humble concerning yourself and bold concerning God and others. If you do that, I don't believe you have to stand for causes. Just stand for what you believe. Evil people do it. They're pushing their will because they believe, for lack of a better word, what they're doing. We're not the minority. We are the majority. The problem is good men are doing nothing. If you simply stood for what you believe, what you believe firmly, regardless of the consequences for God and man, then this country would turn itself around. So focus on the gospel. Make sure your heart's right toward God's. Get into His Word. Have that relationship. Don't be a legalist. Don't be in the Scriptures and just focus so much on them that you miss the whole point, the forest for the trees. Have the relationship with Christ, and He'll take care of the rest. And so that's where I'm coming from.